What did you do that resulted in the longest talk from your parents? Mom found one of those electric wires you attach to batteries to light a bulb in physics class in my laundry. She thought I was clamping my nipples with them. Seems odd that that would be the first thing to come to her mind. The longest talk I ever got from my parents was for something I didn't even do. I'm a pretty chill person that doesn't really blow up and get emotional about most things. Seems like a normal thing, but in my family I seriously stand out. Well, one day it got into my parents' heads that I must be a huge stoner or something. I was around 16 at the time. Came home one day to furious parents threatening everything to heck and back. I lost my car, was supposedly grounded forever with absolutely no evidence. They kept it up for like a week before giving up. Maybe they thought I would eventually admit to something? I don't know. Thing is, I had never smoked a thing in my life and had stayed out of any trouble for the majority of my life. Still don't know what that whole thing was about. Dang, I experienced the same thing in high school. They would even tear my room apart looking for drugs. I never even saw drugs at that point. Didn't even curse yet, but it got in their head I was some secret evil drug addict. Got mad at a friend in 2nd or 3rd grade, called their house, and left random clips from Interview with the Vampire that my sister downloaded off Napster on their answering machine. Absolutely flipped their parents out once they got home, who then called everyone they knew looking for answers. My mother interrogated me about it and I broke down pretty quickly. I was given a long lecture about how scared I made the friend's parents, how they were even about to call the police, and how serious what I had done was. What I did was just exist as my father's offspring. My stepmom purposely, falsely accused me of stealing money from my stepbrother. She told me she was going to do it to prove that my dad loves her and her son more than me. That talk went on for at least 3 days. It was determined that there was no proof I stole it, but it'd be punished anyway. College was cut off and they took full control of my money until I moved out. Cutting off college is not a punishment. That's sabotage. I hope you don't give the time of day to those fricks anymore. Not exactly the longest, but I got so good at timing how long my dad's hour-long lectures were that I zoned out for all but the last minute, every time. Lost my virginity. Snuck over my girlfriend's house when I was 16. Climbed in a window and had a great night. A neighbor must have seen me and told her parents. Next day I get called into the house and yelled at. Then we have to drive over to her house to get an hour-long lecture from her mom about hormones while her dad sits in a chair white-knuckled but silent. I told my parents I wanted to die and they spent hours telling me that I didn't and I was overreacting and that I just had a bad day. I hope you're better now. Literally anything I ever did wrong. What were you thinking me? I don't know. Repeat. I'm just trying to understand your thought process here. There was no thought process. That's not possible. It was an argument as to why I wasn't allowed to go to driving school even though I'm in my 3rd year in college. Whereas my 16-year-old bro got a learner's permit and dibs on our VARs for his birthday. Their reasoning? It was because I'm a woman and driving required a clear head that wasn't over emotional. Not to mention the fact that people would bully you on the road if they found out you were one. These people I absolutely love will never take me seriously because of something I can't help but be. And it stung. A ton. A lot of shouting was involved because I couldn't accept that the pedestal of reasonable thinking I've placed my parents on for so long crumbled ever so slightly that night. Anyway, I'm still stuck on the bus, but I've been working on filing for a learner's permit in secret. This made me so angry just reading it. I hope things are better for you now. Casually mentioned once that YouTubers can get paid for their videos and ended up on the brunt of an hour-long scream fit from my crying mother about how her life is crappy and how I make it worse every day by mentioning dumb crap that you know nothing about. But it's true, and she's the one that ruined her own life. It was actually a productive, positive talk. Dad wanted me to devote myself to sports, but I decided music was my life's desire, to be excellent at it. After much back and forth, Dad finally came around. To my total surprise, he and Mom became unswerving supporters of my career in music, and that talk made all the difference. Music really is your life, including your username lol. When I was in 3rd grade, I liked this girl Melissa T. We had a daily trivia question in the library, and kids were able to cut to the front of the lunch line if we got it correct. My answer, that fateful day, to God knows what question, was Melissa T has a nice butt. Somehow the librarian found out I was the one who wrote that when they checked the answer. Maybe every other kid had their name on their slip, in case they won. My mom was very confused with me. I'd be confused too if my year 3 kid was talking about girls' asses when he hasn't even gone through puberty. I didn't appear grateful for Christmas presents. I will admit, I was disappointed. What happened is that they had given me things that my little sister had wanted. We are close in age, and for most of our growing up we were given the same gifts. They did try to find things we both might have liked, and the same shopping was convenient. By the time we were teens we were different people, so receiving things my sister was ecstatic about and my reaction was less so was kind of stark. I just took the lecture. My parents did work hard, but mostly I was disappointed that they didn't seem to want to know me very well compared to a sister they understood a little better, and the baby of the family. How could I relay that idea when I was 16? That's something they have tried to change over the years, but not without a lot of gentle redirecting on my part. A time where returning and getting new presents should not be a big deal, but I guess they want to think they are good gift givers. Nothing, my dad just rants when he's drunk. At least now he just calls me useless garbage and moves on. I got caught stealing shoes, luckily nothing else, and it was the first time my parents had a sit down with me. Considering they were divorced on not good terms for a decade, and having them in the same room directing their attention at me felt pretty crappy. To be fair though, getting caught stealing was like the last straw where anyone decided to step in on my decisions. It never rains at Camp Green Lake. Joke: don't joke with your parents, period. The one that stands out was when I came home with a letter saying I'd been placed on report. So, in the UK that's like getting an in-school suspension in the US. I'd got into a fight with another boy and cursed him out. The cursing him out is what got me in trouble. Very long lecture about how disappointed they were and respect, and etc. etc. The kid I fought and I hated each other afterwards, and eventually he was expelled. Fast forward 30 years later, we meet randomly on Facebook and now we're really good friends. He had a really crappy childhood, so it's understandable he acted out in school. I wish I'd known at the time. One of my best friends and I went to different high schools, so we'd write each other long notes about life and then exchange them whenever we hung out. In one of my notes, I wrote about having the house to myself and having my older boyfriend over to help with my anatomy homework. My dad did my laundry. The note fell out of my pants pocket. It was a goddamn nuclear meltdown. When I told my mother I've been extremely depressed and having suicidal thoughts, led to the best talk I've ever had with my mother. Both of us crying our eyes out, but her telling me stuff like we will get you the help you need, her reassuring me she couldn't live without me and other things. Was a really long talk, but one I needed and I am very grateful to have had. Come home after school, my dad would usually follow me around the house, block the exit and lock me up in a tiny space for about 2 hours while he forces me to just stand there and listen to his mindless rants about how I'm literally not even worthy of being called an animal. Dang man, frick him, you're better than that. It wasn't a long talk, it was pretty much the only talk. Not long after I turned 16 I got a girl pregnant. After about 3 agonizing weeks of knowing I was going to have to tell them, I did. I did it at like 10 PM though. The next day my dad came up to my room, told me to come downstairs, and there my parents proceeded to give me my one and only talk lecture. It was basically how they were disappointed in me, thought I was smarter than that, and how I was fricking up my future. 2 weeks later, she miscarried and I wished I had waited an extra 2 weeks to say anything to my parents. I went into this thread expecting to laugh and see mostly embarrassing stories and mistakes people made, but all I got was mostly an R-age thread about people's extremely crappy parents. Yup. I asked what a megabyte was, resulted in a 6-hour lecture from my engineer father attempting to explain all of computer science to his 8-year-old daughter. My parents are divorced, so I used to visit my dad on the weekends in middle school. One weekend I left my tablet at his house. I only had this tablet for a month and I didn't figure out how to use incognito mode. My dad did some snooping. We had a long and awkward talk the following weekend when he drove me home. What was on there specifically? I told them that I don't believe in God anymore. My grandmother got involved. It was messy. Did this recently sort of on accident. I just kinda figured everyone knew, but I never brought it up because that conversation would not be fun for me. Oh boy was I wrong. I am Argentinian and met a really cool guy in congregate. Mum, what you doing? Me. I am just talking to some cool guy in this game. Mum, where is he from? Me. He's Brazilian. He recommended me some cool bands. Why? After that we had a talk of the dangers of the internet. It lasted 5 hours. Didn't clear my browser history when I was 15. Didn't know you could. This was back in the earlier days of Yahoo. Dial-up was still the only option, and the searches weren't very refined. So, my search for tickling material. Yes, I have a tickling fetish. I'm a switch. Feel free to hammer. Also guarded things like bestiality and sadism, neither of which I'm into. So I had to sit there and listen to my mom list off this great list of things Yahoo had pulled up and tell her I was experimenting and trying to figure out what I'm into, and turned out not to be into any of them. Thankfully she seemed to believe me and never brought it up again. Name checks out. They got a hold of my phone. You'll have some crappy butt parents. But this thread show me for sure I don't miss being a teen. Like it was already tough. Overreacting parents are like a cherry on a weird sundae. Got ticketed for possession of marijuana. Hoo boy. As a Pennsylvanian I can't relate to this. You could do hard time for an empty baggie that had a corner dirty from having had pot in it if a cop found it. Getting caught around here was life-changing business. I wouldn't call it a talk, I would call it more like being yelled at for 20 minutes when my sister said some terrible things to me and I got really depressed. AKD said something kind of dark, along the terms of committing suicide, and my dad heard it, so instead of asking if I was okay he yelled at me because I was making inappropriate jokes, and if I made jokes like that at school I would get taken away by police to somewhere I don't wanna be. When I was in 3rd grade I was getting bullied pretty badly and didn't really have friends that my mom hadn't basically made by proxy for me. My little brother was also really settling into his role as the favorite child since he had just started kindergarten. I also had 2 teachers, one for math and reading, one for everything else, and the math and reading teacher, Mrs. Dillard, was kind of a B. I didn't like her. Basically I was a hot mess of emotions. One day I had had enough. I didn't even think about what I was doing. Mrs. Dillard had a 1-seater bathroom in her classroom. Most teachers did in that school, and I asked to use the bathroom. I found some dry erase markers and wrote all over the tile walls, the toilet, a canvas bag, some tissue boxes, etc. Things like poopy, butts, fart, etc. Maybe even crap, which was the worst word I knew. I was pretty sheltered. Wrote a couple of kids' names in graffiti style phrasing, like Joe was here and Sam rocks, not sure what the logic was there. I misspelled one kid's name. I wrote please pee here and please poop here on the toilet. I also used an erasable marker to write school is stupid on 3 cubbies in the other teacher's room. Well, they caught me. Went to the vice principal for the first time in my life. I was a goody 2-shoes nerd. He kept asking me why I did it. I had no idea. I couldn't own up to it either. I just could not tell the truth. Kept lying and lying and denying and denying. Said that I wrote on the cubbies but not the bathroom, so on and so forth. It was some real kind of mental block. My parents talked to me over and over again over the course of the next couple of days. Interrogation, break, interrogation, break, etc. I just absolutely could not admit to doing it even after they said over and over again that I should just tell the truth. Well, eventually I all but confessed to the whole thing. As punishment I was not allowed to dress up for Halloween, go to my friend's birthday party, or watch TV or play computer games for a month. Wasn't even the worst punishment I'd end up getting in my life. I made an Instagram account about my principal talking lots of crap about her. Got suspended for 2 days, 1 out of school, 1 in school, and they were P. So, my parents made me play football in high school. I hated it. and everyone knew it. My parents, the whole team, and even some of the coaches. We had this thing where on the last week of summer we had to stay at the school over the weekend and practice multiple times a day. Some kids ended up trashing the gym real bad, and we had to run sprints first thing in the morning because of it. I was having a hard time, because I'm fat and out of shape, so one of the other kids, who I knew was responsible for the gym, told me to suck it up. That really pissed me off, so I ended up crying. I cry when I'm mad sometimes. You know, when my mom picked me up on, I told her about it, and she ended up yelling at me for it. She's generally a pretty mild-mannered person, but this really set her off, for some reason. She said that my teammates would harass me behind my back for crying in front of them. So here I am, thinking I could confide this embarrassing story with my caring mother, getting yelled at for it, trust completely shattered. I was always a mama's boy growing up. Never once talked back to her about anything, but I felt the need to stand up for myself. Here, I tried to tell her off for needlessly escalating the situation and that I don't care what people say about me, but I was already in tears, so exactly how well that was communicated is tough to say. Anyways, when we get home I storm up to my room and close myself off. My mom ends up coming upstairs a few minutes later and we talk it out. Ends with us both in tears and the most awkward dinner of my life. We made up in the end, but to this day I just can't talk to her for comfort if I'm feeling down. That time I hit and run a parked car, not a person, in my high school parking lot. I was caught. Campus cops got involved. I was banned from parking on campus for the rest of the year. That talk lasted like the whole semester. They just took breaks to eat and sleep and go to work. One day I got home from school and watched a video about people criticizing the religion I grew up in. Half an hour through the video, I fell asleep. My mother walked into my bedroom while the video was still playing as I slept. A while later, I woke up from my nap and my parents tell me to go into their bedroom for a talk. What ensued was a couple hours of my parents telling me to stop watching the videos, that there was an evil spirit among me, that I needed to repent, etc. It was a terrible experience that really shook the relationship I had with my parents for a while. To any theist parents reading this, please don't react this way if your child is doubting. Thank you very much. This is the goodest fly boy. He will bring you 10 years of happiness in exchange for a like on this video. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.